it's Ray from ProShaper in Charlton, Massachusetts. We're back on the 550 nose piece. This is what we got done in the last video. This is video number 2 on it. We get a lot of attention on it. They said, hey, let's continue with this panel. And I said, okay. So what did I do? I put, I think, 20-something minutes in it, and I shrunk the side, and I did a little internal shrinking over here. And for guidance, I used my flexible shape pattern. Where did this flexible shape pattern come from? Mark and turn around. You can see the 550 Porsche Spider wire form that we did. It was actually Mark that made the wire form. And we've made a lot of steel panels with it, which originally these were aluminum, but I have my students make 20-gauge steel panels first. And from those 20-gauge steel panels, that's how we made the flexible shape patterns, and that's my intent with all the student-built, coach-built cars we're doing in the shop here at my classes. So this was just roughed out, and it allows me, the flexible shape pattern allows me a game plan as what to do without having to fit to the buck. It's fitting somewhat. We've got, it would look like this, like it's on the flat panel, and all this has been filled up. So we've created this new area value, which is very close to the flexible shape pattern area value. But what does it look like if we put it on the wire form? So if we go over to the wire form and we put it over here like this, it's not fitting too well. And this is where the big mystery is with a lot of people that are trying to learn this craft. They'll go, well, how do I get from this to the next step, meaning fitting closer to the buck, whether it's a wood station buck or a wire form or whatever you have. And that's what the beauty of the flexible shape pattern is. It allows you, but you have to have something to copy first. But you can, if you made a wire form, you could foam fill these and smooth it all out and get a flexible shape pattern off of it, and that would give you the information to make one side. You flip the flexible shape pattern inside out, and you get the information for the other side. So let's see what we've got to do tonight. And we're not going to spend that much time on this. We'll try to give it maybe another 20-minute interval here and see how far along we can get. So I don't want to obsess about getting it perfect right now, but what it will do is probably, as I mentioned in the last video, is we'll smooth this out a little bit. So we'll try smoothing this out. We'll try with the wheel, and if we want, we can try the power hammer a little bit. And also maybe we'll puff this up a little bit, because this needs a little bit of area value in it. When you put this down here, there's a lot of gap, and we got to fill that out a little bit. So let's start out first. We'll smooth this out where I had the shrinking going on in the power hammer. Pull that right over with the power hammer with the thumbnail die. And we'll put this in the wheel here, and I've got my, what I call my medium wheel. It's my workhorse wheel, and it's got that nice heavy radius on it, which will flow right in here nicely. So we're going to trim this down probably a little bit too. Now some people have said, oh boy, if you did your shrinks in the power hammer a little slow, you wouldn't get all of this. And yeah, I just wanted to make it all happen fast, and I was a little less than slow. I should have been a little better on my shrinks, and it would have cleaned it easier. But this will clean up all nice anyways. What we don't want to do is we really don't want to wheel on this edge. If we wheel on this edge or hammer on this edge, it just stretches it out and negates what you just did with all the shrinking. So I'm inboard from that edge. I just want to, and I might not get it all perfect right now. I just want to lay down a little bit so I can get a better reading on it. Now let's see if I can traverse through here. Now this is in the reverse, and that's the valley of the reverse, and you don't want to go with high pressure in here, but you have to smooth this all down. So we're going to go through here with just a settling pressure. It's all upset here. It has a lot of ridges and bumps and lumps, and we're going to just set it all down and get it smooth. As I mentioned in the last video, it only takes a few minutes to smooth this all out. Now this is the only way I can do this. If I try to turn this 90 degrees, the top wheel is gonna bite on these, on its edges really bad. Try to settle that all down. Now we're making this from the wire form. We're using the wire form as our ultimate guide. It's the blueprint that we're using. We took a lot of care in making the wire form. And no matter what you do, there'll be some mistakes in your primary information. There's, I'm sure, some mistakes in our wire form, but it's going to look really sweet when we get all the panels done. So, how did they make these panels originally? Well, it was a German coach building firm called Wendler made these panels. Wendler Coach Building, and they go back, I guess, quite a ways, and they made bodies in the 30s and up to, I don't know, maybe the 60s. I don't know their entire history, but it's out there if you want to do some research. Look up Wendler, W-E-N-D-L-E-R, and Porsche gave them the job of making these 550 bodies. So now they were guided by the drawings of Erwin Commenda. He was the designer of the 550, also the 356, and he's sort of like an unsung hero because he came up with the beautiful designs that everybody likes, but he doesn't really get the credit. His name's not on the car. Porsche's name's on the car. So now we got it smoothed down. I'm putting a little arrangement in here with the wheel. This is really light pressure, and I'm just pulling this over here like this, putting this curve in it. This is using the wheel as an arranging tool. Got it smoothed out a little bit, and then this here we want to arrange down a little bit. So pull that around some more. And we're going to have to shrink around that corner here. And there's a lot of trimming that has to happen here too. So let's just see where we're at now. Now we're somewhat smooth. There's all kinds of residue of the shrinking process here, and that'll go away completely. Same thing over here. That was the internal shrink where we got that reverse curve. You can see the radius is going this way, and there's a radius going that way, and that was all internal shrink with a little bit of edge stretching to create that reverse. So now we put the flexible shape pattern on, and what we want to do is what I call find a home. That's to home this in where it fits the best, and then we're going to put some marks on it, and then we can see if we can trim any of it. Well, I can trim definitely on this back side. I'll probably mark that. So let's, I'll stop here and I'll do some marking, and I'll show you after I get it all marked, and then we'll trim it up. Alright, so I've located the best spot. I referred to my original marks here. I got it indexed back on my original green dots that I had put in for both the ring and the valley here. Got it on there, and this is all going to be extra here. There's still at least 3/4 of an inch or so extra. So now I've marked it with the pen just rough. And then what I like to do is whenever you cut a line, you want to make sure your line's really accurate. So I lay the lines out with this blue tape, which I do sell in my on my store, ProShaper.com. This is the nicest tape. I sell it very inexpensively, and it makes it possible to snap a really clean line. There's nothing worse than having a cut line that's wavering all over the place. So this is still a preliminary cut. This isn't the final cut by any stretch. So, but even in the middle, in the middle of the process of building the panel, you want to make a nice line. So there's a clean cut now. We'll sand that cut a little bit with some 80 sandpaper, and that'll make it easier to hold so you don't get bitten by it. So you sand it with 80 paper, and you put the paper at about a 45-degree angle. Now, I mentioned Wendler coach builders built the 550s, and how did they build them? Well, they didn't do them with a wire form. They didn't do them with a wood station buck. They did them with a hardwood solid surface buck. And with that case, and that's true of a lot of people making a lot of production type panels, they'll spend the time and make a full surface buck, and they'll actually hammer the aluminum right on that buck. Now, that's a big advantage, especially for where this reverse curve part of the panel is. So they'll have that on there tightly onto the buck, and they'll be able to anneal this section, make it super soft, and then they'll be able to do internal shrinking by hammering against that wood buck. Now, we'll put some pictures in showing what a solid wood buck looks like. There's a company up in New Hampshire making replica 550s that are super accurate, and he had a wood buck made, or he made it himself, I'm not sure, but we'll put that picture in to show you what that full surface wood buck looks like. And most people that are trying to build a replica of any type of car are not going to do that. That's a production technique. So a lot of people opt for a wood station buck, and because I think it's sort of like traditional. And I personally don't like the wood station bucks. Why? Because they're very difficult to read, they're very difficult to clamp to, and that's why I use the wire forms, because they are very easy to clamp to. And as we develop this panel, you'll be able to see what you can do on the wire form. And what we've been doing in the classes on the wire form is doing exactly what Wendler had done, whereas they would shrink this with a hammer right on the buck. Well, we found out that we could do that on the wire form too. We just basically have to clamp the panel and get it captured on the wire form. And then what we do is, if you've got a high spot here or something in this reverse section, then we just hit it with a little acetylene torch, and you don't have to warm it up that much, 300-400 degrees or so, below annealing temperature, and you just tap, tap, tap it, and it'll just shrink right in easily. So that's a big advantage I think the wire form has over the wood buck. You can't really throw heat at it when you have a wood buck. And I don't think you can capture the panel on a wood buck, a station buck, as well as you can with a wire form. So we'll probably see some of that later on. But right now, what I want to do is, I want to punch this out a little bit more so this fits a little better here. So we're going to put a little area in here, and I have all kinds of options. You know, if you wanted to do this with shrinking on the edge, you could shrink the edge. You could put it in a kick shrinker and shrink that edge, and that's going to do it. I generally don't like to do that because it leaves marks. So I could bring it over to the power hammer, and I could hit it with the power hammer, and that would stretch it, or I could wheel it a bunch. But I'm going to opt to just put it on the beater bag and hit it a little bit, and we'll fill this out a little more. So we're going to tune this right on the beater bag so it fills out a little bit more, and we'll find out that, see, right now I call this the horizon view, and if you look at that panel is almost straight there. So let me get a straight edge so you can see how straight that is, and we'll watch the development of the panel. You can see I got a straight edge there now. Now it's rolling over here, but right in this region here it's dead flat. If you hold it up to the, I call it the horizon view, you're just looking at that horizon, you can see it's pretty dead flat there. This is the close observation. You always got to be observing your panel very closely and watch every little step that you do. Every step that you do with that panel has to be incrementally towards the goal line, which is, the goal line is it fits perfectly on that buck, or it fits perfectly on the flexible shape pattern. So let's take a look at the front of this wire form. If Mark can pan down here and look down on this wire form, or actually I bring this straight edge over and I put it in that section here, and you can see there's quite a bit of rock here. So there is a nice curve right there, and we got to add that curve by adding an area in here that will create that curve. And we can do it by all stretching, which is not a problem. It's a very minor compound curve in there, so we can all stretch it, or we can do some shrinking, but I'm opting not to do the shrinking. I'm just going to stretch it. So here we are all set up on the beater bag, and we're going to stretch this out a little bit to give that curve to it. So we can, this is my hammers that we make, and this is the low crown end, this is a medium crown end. And what you don't want to do is hit with the heel of the hammer. That's kind of stressing the metal. We want to just tap it like this and let the blows add up. If you hit it too hard, you can stress the metal. It makes little stretch marks. They will come out, but it's best to just take your time, and we'll just hit it a little bit like this. Now again, we could do this all with the wheel, we could do it with the power hammer. Just showing you the different methods. This shrinking we could have done in the shrinking facilitator. It's just the different ways of doing it. I try to gear my classes to the simpler methods because not everybody wants to spend hundreds of thousands of dollars on tools. So you hit, and so that you try not to hit the same spot twice. You try to aim for spots that you haven't hit. So I'm just going to hit a little bit, and then I'm going to check the flexible shape pattern. Now, what if I went too far? It's not a problem because I can shrink it back down again. I've done it many times. You watch my video where I shrunk it all down. You can shrink it with heat. You can trap it. There's all kinds of ways to shrink it. Metal is clay. I have my t-shirt. Metal is clay. I got to get one myself. I think I ordered one. We got a lot of nice cool t-shirts. Yeah, Frank was in the other day, and Frank is like a walking wit factory. He just comes out with these witticisms all the day, and all the time, all day long. And he was in my office, and he said, "Boy, if it wasn't for ProShaper, my life would suck." And he volunteers. He loves it. He comes here every day and volunteers, and we give him all kinds of different tasks to do. So I said, boy, that's brilliant, Frank. We're going to get a t-shirt. So we do have a t-shirt now. If it wasn't for ProShaper, my life would suck. So it's on my website and on the videos on the Teespring. So that's a little bit better. It's starting to fill out. Let's give it a little more. Now I think when they built these at Wendler, this is 050 aluminum. 050 is pretty stiff for a sports car body. Porsche and Lotus they did the same design philosophy. Of course, I think it was Porsche before that Lotus that did it, that lightweight is the mantra for them. And I believe the 550s original were 40 thousandths. And they probably annealed that in sections when they were forming it, so they don't have to anneal the entire panel. And when they were making the panels, there was always the myth that there was an old coach builder that like on the early 356, the Gamun Porsches, that I always heard that there was some coach builder with his big stump and he made the whole production run. And he had to be drunk in order to do it and everything. But the reality was the Germans have a power hammer called a Parx, P-A-R-X. And we'll throw a picture of a Parx power hammer in. One of my Facebook friends is Brian Tante down in Australia, and he's got had access to an original 550, and he's doing a meticulous job. I mean, Wendler couldn't do a better job. I mean, it's just crazy perfection. He's made a beautiful full wood buck with full surface on, I believe, the front and the back. And he's also made an external buck to make sure that everything as he's in process is going to be fitting really well. So you can follow him. He does have a YouTube channel, I believe, but I'm not sure what it is. We'll look it up. He's on Facebook under Brian Tante. He does superb work. So you also have to understand that if you watch another channel, you'll see people doing stuff a lot different than I do. That's just the nature of the beast. Everybody does the work a little bit different. All that matters is when the panel is done or the body is done, it looks right and it's accurate and smooth. That's all that matters. So how you get there, it doesn't have too much of an impact. So now we're getting a little bit better here. Let's see if we've got any curve put in here now. We'll put the straight edge on it. Oh, look at that. We were dead flat before, and now we're getting a pretty good rock there. So let's wheel that out. That's an important fact, is that when you're trying to achieve a goal, it's best to do it in stages. Instead of going all the way from A to B, if the goal is B, try to do that in stages. So we're going to wheel this out. And that'll settle that in. I'm going to get some gloves on here. So I'm using a medium pressure just to settle all those lumps in. And this is where it makes the turn. I want to bring that down and around a little bit, so I'm going to give it a little down pressure here. And you see it's popping. I call that a peak. That's telling me I need to shrink that a little bit. So I might throw the shrink die on that a little bit. I really don't worry about what it looks like in this process at all. What you're seeing is I'm changing the area value, which is the surface area. I've changed it by reducing it around the edges that needed to be shrunk, and then I'm adding to it in the surfaces that need to be stretched or puffed out. Now this edge here, I want to stretch that edge a little bit to get a little more reverse going here. So I'm going to bump up the pressure. I was in a real low pressure there. And I'm going to bump the pressure up to get that edge stretching a little. That just needs more material in order to lay down. So, okay, I just did a little initial amount there, and now let's see what we have. Let me put this back on. And I made some what I call homes. Those are little 90 degrees around that edge there. And that tells me where I had this when I got the best fit. So I'm still a little loose over here. You see all this looseness here. Now I can shrink this some more over here, which I might do. And let's see, we're a little high right here. We might do some more shrinking in here, but we'll do, like I mentioned, we can do that on the wire form a little bit later. Because I don't want to stretch this edge out so much that it becomes paper thin. So now I've got a little bit of rock in here, and you always want to look at your horizon view and see what you got. And that's not bad. It's a little, probably a little weak in here. So the next step, we want this to be a flat plane, and right now it's kind of rolling a little bit. So what are we going to do next? Well, we put that flexible shape pattern on, and we're going to devise a plan. We're going back to our homes, and we have the option of shrinking more here because these edges are up this way too much. We got to bring them down. So let's try a little more shrinking on these edges here, and we'll bring that down and around a little bit more. So we'll go over the power hammer in a few minutes on the power hammer and see what we can do. We'll try to do a little shrinking right on this radius here too. It might have over shrunk a little, but see. Okay. We put it on our marks. There's our marks. That's all laying down pretty good now. That helped out a bunch. Let's leave it at that for now. We're back on the wheel, and we'll smooth out that and see what it looks like. going to do is, so I can't get in right here to smooth that the way. See how it's smoothing out really nice. I'm going to actually come into here because I'm going to do some stretching. You can see that's kind of not flat. It's tilting in this way. So that's going to have to be stretched out a bunch. So I'm going to run in, go over that tight radius there, and smooth that all out. That might not be the right wheel, but I think it'll do it. Or maybe we can move. No, it's all right. It's doing it. I have to worry about edge bite on the bottom wheel. Yeah, it doesn't look like it's biting, so it should be all right. I was thinking I need to go up one higher wheel, but I can get through there. So I'm going to get that all smoothed out. And all I'm doing here is just smoothing out all those shrink marks. There's no great skill set. I'm just traversing that area to settle those shrinks in. And when I stretch on this side of the shrink, it'll actually make that angle a little bit better. So I think the angle is pretty close now. Let's try moving to a smaller wheel. See if we get a little better result. I don't know if I can fit it over here. Let's see. Back that off. Looking a little better, cleaned up. Go back to this wheel. Get that smooth a little. And let's stop there and see what the flexible shape pattern says. Now we got this all rounded and we want this to be a flat plane. We'll have to modify that in a little bit. And we go back to our homes. There's our little homing marks right there and there. And now you can see that flexible shape pattern is fitting a lot better. A lot better over and around the headlight. I'm going to concentrate on the headlight first, then I'll finish the reverse curve. So I've got a little bit that it's still got to come up over here. Let me see. Went off my home right there. It's still got to come up a little bit right in here. So let's take and re-dot it again where our dots were, so we don't lose track of where our transition line is here. There it is right there. What we're going to do now is we're going to punch this out a little bit from the back side. This has all been mostly shrinking. The only stretching that we've done is to smooth out the shrink marks. So now we're going to locate these points inside. You can hold your finger like this and kind of look sideways, and you can get a pretty good location of where this side is relative to this side. Okay, so I got my mark in here. And we're going to take a little plastic Delrin tool. We'll use that one. It's pretty blunt there. And we'll pop that out a little bit. Let me I got to get a hammer for it. 1 second. So this is my transferred target here. So that wants to be pushed this way. I'm going to have to put some muffs on. Let me get some muffs. I got some muffs on. Now we hit that. We want to make sure that our target is right. So there's our line. Looks like our target is good. So. I don't like the way this is biting on the edges, so I'm going to take a little grinder and kill those edges. So the Delrin tool needs a little dressing on the edge. It's biting. That's wheel bite, power hammer, die bite, whatever. If the edges bite, even a body hammer, that's why you want to relieve the edges. So we're going to knock those edges down a little bit. Little 3-inch grinder here. Done. That should do it. Any bite can cause potentially a problem later on, so we'll just avoid them by not doing them. And we'll see what that did. All right. The most important thing in making any panel is doing it slow and incremental. If you try to do too much at once, you're going to end up in trouble. trouble can be overdevelopment, which is the most usual result, and then you're going to have to shrink it back, which you can do, but just avoid that whole deal by just going in baby steps to your goal. So always look for the worst spot. Now this is laying down really nice on the edges here and to here, and even here it's not too bad, but we have a gap right in here. So we got to bring that up, and we look for the worst spot, and I'd say that's the worst spot. So we're going to bring that up a little bit here. Ow! This is a dangerous game here. You don't want to hit too much in one spot because you can cause it to crack. The metal is very forgiving. You can hit it and hit it and hit it, but you got to do it a little bit at a time. We can make this into aluminum foil if we want to. We know that aluminum foil is made by doing a slow rolling process. We hit a little bit here and we'll hit a little bit over here too. So that's coming up nice, and it might not be the most entertaining part of this video, watching me put 6,000 hammer blows in here, but let's cut right here. I'll do a little bit more, and then we'll see where we're at. Alright, so we're back. I used the little caulking tool. It wasn't 3,500, it was I think 1,213. No, really, it was about 300 blows or so. And just punched it up from the back. You don't want to hit it all in one spot, so we did a little bit over here and a little bit over here. So that pumps the whole thing up. And you can see now, except for a little crown here, this angle here, this plane, and it's the Porsche angle. I think it's 22 degrees or something like that they Erwin Commender came in with that angle for all the headlight mountings. And the 911, the 550, I think the Volkswagen has got that same angle everywhere. And so that's your homework, find out what that angle is. I think it's 22 degrees. And the panel ends up that it shoots off to this side a little bit. So we've got a little bit more done on it tonight. This flexible shape pattern now with all those hammer blows, they all have to be smoothed out. So we're getting nice and tight. You saw before, I go back to my homes, we had big gaps here, and there's just minor little gaps now, and it's laying down on the sides really nice. The biggest problem, and that's something you should always address, is you always address the worst problem on a panel. And I really counted this as the worst problem, getting this all settled in. And I got that settled in pretty good. I'm probably at about 90% of where I need to be. And now the next worst problem is dealing with this. And you can see this, that would settle in, but what's holding that all up? It's right here. There's too much metal. This needs to be shrunk right in here. So we can probably try to do a shrink the next time. We'll use a little heat, and we'll bring that down with a little heat. As long as we keep this captured, that will shrink right in, and you'll be able to see those results. Remember, I've got a special on my classes now. I've got 20% off. There's only a few days left. That's for the classes in 2021. So you can choose any of the classes. We're all in the COVID madness still. Hopefully it'll go away by February or January, maybe March at the latest or something. And if you choose the early month and you can't come, you can always reschedule. Alright, so here we are. We've clamped it onto the wire form after doing that caulking in here to stretch that edge out a little bit. And set the arrangement a little bit. We got a couple clamps on here. And like I mentioned, the worst section that we have is right here. It's still a little bit too proud, too much area right in here. And after clamping it on here, I'll be able to shrink that in situ right here on the buck. And that's going to be in the next installment. You'll see where you can take some heat and just shrink that right down easily. Otherwise, it can be a real pain to solve that problem. We're not fitting the buck superbly yet, but we will. But now we actually have the panel on the buck. We started out with a flat panel and it was all over the place, but it's actually on the buck. It's quite a ways away from the buck, but we're going to settle it in, and that's the whole art of getting this to fit properly, is settling it in on the buck. And that'll be the next installments on this panel. So what we're intending to do now is we're actually going to show how to settle it in. I think everybody understands how the flexible shape pattern allows you to develop the panel even to full development, but on this video we want to show how you settle it in and why the wire form buck is such a superior method to settle it in. It allows you to clamp, it'll allow you to shrink in situ right here on the buck. So there'll be some exciting segments coming up in the next stages of development of this panel. Keep watching. It's Ray from ProShaper in Charlton, Massachusetts. Thank you.